This episode of Made in America is brought to you by America's Inventorly and Home Talk USA. Home Talk is a proud member of the King's Broadcasting Network, which has been bringing you the best in home-based innovation since 1998.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America.
This segment is brought to you by the law offices of R.P. Baraska. RPB law offices have been bringing corporate-level legal expertise to the independent inventor community for more than 20 years. For all your inventing legal needs, trust rpblawoffices.com.
Hello and welcome, everyone, back to the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, Chairman of the Coalition for Prosperous America. And I'm joined today with my co-host, John Toomey, who's the president at the Coalition for Prosperous America. We're coming to you today on the Home Talk USA radio network. Don't forget, we're streaming live at hometalkusa.com and all across America on your radio. John, hope you're having a great day. We have an exciting show lined up, don't we?
It's a great lineup here today, Zach. We're really excited to have a very special guest from Indiana's 9th Congressional District.
Yeah, we've got Congresswoman Erin Houchin. She does represent Indiana's 9th Congressional District, and that's in Seymour, Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana. And there's a strong base of Hoosier manufacturers in her district. The Congresswoman, she's been a great voice for Southern Indiana manufacturing, for American workers, and for fair trade. And recently, Rep. Houchin, she's serving on 3 important committees. That's the House Energy and Commerce, the House Budget, and the Rules Committee. And within her district, you heard us on a recent show talking to Guardian Bikes. Guardian Bikes is within her district, and it's a U.S.-made children's bicycle company. They're leading the way, reshoring manufacturing from overseas, and they employ over 200 fantastic Americans and Hoosiers at their plant in Seymour, Indiana. The Coalition for Prosperous America has been very proud to partner with Guardian Bikes, and we're showcasing with them what's possible when American innovation meets American production. So it's my pleasure to bring on the Congresswoman Erin Houchin today. Thank you for joining us, Congresswoman. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be with you.
Thanks for being here. You know, you represent one of the most exciting manufacturing success stories in America, Guardian Bikes. And I know recently they had a big ribbon cutting ceremony. They were expanding there, and you got to tour that facility. What stood out to you when you were seeing all those bikes being made right here in your district?
Well, it's been incredible. It's been an incredible transformation, Zach. I have to tell you, when I got elected to Congress, one of my first manufacturing visits was to Guardian Bikes. When they had just recently moved to Indiana from Texas, they were in one building with 16 employees. And I'm just in my 3rd year, and now there are 200 employees. They're investing $19 million in building these great quality children's bikes right here in the USA, more than 200 employees and growing. It's such an exciting success story. And honestly, President Trump's tariff policy is a big reason they've been able to do this. We were working with them on one-off policies, trying to help make it easier for them to onshore their manufacturing. When President Trump came in and issued this reciprocal tariff plan and his aggressive tariff strategy, which is resulting in putting American manufacturers first, it's been an exciting, absolutely thrilling transformation to see that what is possible under Trump's America.
It sure is exciting, and that's a great example of what we at the coalition see happening all across America. When we get the policy right, and when there's the will to do it in America, like we see from the CEO of Guardian, Brian Riley, it can bring the jobs and it can bring the innovation and the investment. We can make anything in America. I even saw a story that they're making Sharpie markers, not in your district, unfortunately, but we can make high volume, low cost products right here in America when we put our minds to it. And I guess maybe that kind of leads into, does this see, how does Guardian's success, does this reflect what's going on, in the broader manufacturing comeback in Indiana? It reflects what I see elsewhere in the country, but what else do you see in your district regarding manufacturing?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's playing a role in that. I mean, Guardian Bikes is obviously they're looking to manufacture as much as they can in the United States, and they are looking to local supply chains, which wouldn't exist and couldn't thrive if we did not have a facility like Guardian Bikes, which would rely on this local manufacturing. We've not really had a president focused on putting American manufacturers first. We've seen manufacturing leave the United States for other countries, even countries that are hostile to the United States. We've really given up all of our leverage, and we've done that and not really revisited any of this since World War II. Brian Riley was very innovative in saying, look, I want to make a quality bicycle and I want to make it in the United States. He had been to China. He had been to all these other countries that were in the business and realized that there might be an opportunity. He hit some roadblocks, and I think that this tariff perspective that we see from President Trump has been enabling not just manufacturers like Guardian Bikes, but all of the supply chain that Guardian Bikes depends on, and giving them the business they need to grow and thrive as well.
That's right. I'm a manufacturer as well, and so I understand that supply chain so well and how it creates jobs up and down the chain. When somebody who makes a top-level product like a bike, that's sold to an end user, they're buying the tubing, they're buying the components and everything. And again, Guardian has had to overcome some of the fact that some of those components aren't made, so they've had to get creative and start making them. But at the end of the day, it's good jobs, right? Those people at the plant in Indiana are making an above-average wage. I see the same thing in my supply chain, above average wage for the area. So these are the kind of jobs that, people, in government should be encouraging. And it's so refreshing to have someone like yourself and President Trump and his administration, their leadership and their vision and their courage. Because you're right. For the last 30 years, it's really been a bipartisan agreement to offshore everything that we make. It's been bad for national security. It's been bad for jobs. It's been bad for the middle class. The data proves it. It doesn't mind. We've seen that. I think we're seeing it in other parts of America and other parts of our manufacturing network as well. John, what are you seeing across our membership? Is this the story going on, or is this unique to Indiana here?
No, I mean, we heard the other day from Erin, right, the congressman from Florida's 4th District, talk about the manufacturing revitalization, even in the state of Florida, right, which some may think is more known for tourism and vacation. But this is a renaissance across the country right now. With the Trump administration's agenda, they set out goals to ensure that we have not just manufacturing of high-tech semiconductors, but also low and medium tech products, right? It's the importance and it's the significance of folks like Brian Riley to make bicycles here again. Going fully vertical like they're doing, it's a tremendous success story. And, you saw during World War II how Schwinn retooled and supplied precision parts for the military. And then sadly, yes, Schwinn is the story of offshoring, right, that we heard in far too many industries. But we're seeing this across the country. I don't think it's just localized to Indiana. I think we're seeing it elsewhere. We're hearing it from our members. And by and large, that's driven by the Trump administration's goals and agenda, especially the actions coming out of the Commerce Department with the 232 investigations.
Yeah, and there's another component that plays into this too. We've seen issues with the kind of, quite frankly, labor conditions in China where these are being made, with Uyghurs and other issues where we have concerns. Is this forced labor going into the products we're making? Wasn't there a ruling just recently from CBP on some of these other foreign bike components coming in that may be going into supply chains to all these other big brand names sold in the big box stores? How does that play into this?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Zach. I mean, a lot of these products that we see coming out of regions like Xinjiang and China are tainted with forced labor, really slave labor, right? We say forced labor. Let's call it what it is. It's slave labor. They're making products, everything from pharmaceuticals to bicycles, and it's not safe, right? I mean, Brian tells a story about how he started this business. He had a family member who was in a tragic accident, and he invented Sure Stop technology, a braking technology that would ensure that you don't go flying over your handlebars. And so Brian's roots are in sharing that it's a safe product, right? And the products coming out of China, like, do you really want to put your child or your toddler on a bike, knowing that it was made in these slave labor conditions that, quite honestly, is it going to hold up when they go to stop suddenly at a stop sign? I mean, it's obviously very scary when you put your kid on a bike for the first time. You want to make sure that it's going to do what it says it's going to do, right? So, Congresswoman, any thoughts to that?
Yeah, Congressman, I was going to ask you, do you think CBP, we haven't seen this kind of, action from them before. Do you think we'll continue to see things like that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the 232 investigations, because I do think it's making a difference in making, certainly paying attention now when we weren't paying attention before to some of these practices and an undercutting of U.S. manufacturers. And actually, again, I go back to let's make America great again. Let's put America first. That's what President Trump is doing. I was with the president when he first was discussing his reciprocal tariff plan. And, this has not been across the board something that every manufacturer has been excited about. I've got a manufacturer in the district that or in the state who relies heavily on China. And it's very difficult for them to diversify their supply chain, but they're working on it. But what I would say is that if we really are trying to get to freer and fairer trade, this is not a bad strategy to take everybody to the same task, have them come back to the table to renegotiate. And we've seen it with the number of countries that have come forward and said, hey, let me have a deal. Let me work this out with the president. I was in the Oval Office whenever the president negotiated the trade deal with Japan. So fascinating. He's the deal maker in chief. This is going to be good for our manufacturers. I'm certainly grateful that it's a part of our story in the 9th District with Guardian Bikes.
Thank you, Congressman Houchin. We're going to talk a little bit more about that after the break. For everybody listening, we've got to go to a short break. Don't forget to visit us at the website hometalkusa.com. We'll be back talking about tariffs and American industrial policy, making America great and making good jobs. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This segment is brought to you by SearchQuest Patent Search. SearchQuest provides for a comprehensive patent search that searches the entire world and not just the U.S. Patent Office. Make sure that before you spend those big bucks having a patent written, you've done your due diligence by getting a comprehensive patent search. Use SearchQuestPatents.com for all your patent search needs. They scour the world for you.
Hello, and welcome back to the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, from the Coalition for Prosperous America, along with John Toomey, the president for the Coalition for the Prosperous America, and we're here today with you on Home Talk USA Radio. Returning with us is our guest for today, Representative Erin Houchin. She's from Indiana's 9th District, and we've been talking with her about Guardian Bikes, a manufacturer that's expanding in her facility thanks to the Trump tariffs and the Made in America agenda. Congresswoman, you've been a strong supporter of President Trump's America First trade policy agenda. It's a plan that's using tariffs and trade tools to rebuild America's industrial base. How do you see that playing into the families and the workers in Indiana? How does that impact people?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. It certainly is creating jobs in Southeast Indiana and jobs that we really need. I mean, Indiana is a very manufacturing heavy state. We've been able to do that because of low relative energy rates. We have suffered, though, from corporate tax rates under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents that really haven't focused on putting the American worker first. President Trump has done that, and we're seeing the results. We are seeing that jobs are being created. The policies of the Trump administration, up to and including adjusting the corporate tax rate, which is a tool in the toolbox that we've long pushed for, but also doing things like work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP benefits. That will drive people back into the workforce, and we have to have those jobs available. This tariff plan is a job creator. It's a net job creator. It creates the supply chains that we've lost. It will take a while to rebuild that muscle memory in the United States, but that shouldn't mean that we should shy away from trying to do it. I think it's going to be a boon for the economy, not just in the Indiana and the Midwest, but nationwide.
I agree with you on that. And I think it is going to be a long-term thing. Look, this didn't happen overnight. It took, 30, 40 years to offshore the vast majority of our industrial base. And if we were able, my opinion is if we were able to send it that way, we can certainly bring it back this way. We need to be patient and we need to stay the course. We can't get scared because of one bad case or another bad case. But, I've heard from other manufacturers, and I get it. People have become dependent on the import strategy. That was the wisdom of the last 30 years. But, the tariffs are designed to change behavior and encourage changes and stuff. And, they're not so painful that, people aren't going, they can deal with it. And what I encourage manufacturers to focus on is getting protection on their outputs to the extent that maybe they've seen an increase on something that they haven't figured out how to make in America yet. Your biggest marketplace is probably America. It is for most of the world. You sell to the richest, best consumer market in the world. And so if you're not, getting protection, if you're selling into the market and you're still dealing with foreign predators coming in and stealing your market, come to the administration. What are they doing at the Department of Commerce right now? It's called the inclusion round, right? And John, aren't we helping members around the country? And anybody listening that wants to get involved in this, can't they come and be part of the process and maybe get some protection?
So these inclusion rounds are historic, right? In the past, we've had exclusion rounds where we would allow folks to petition and receive tariff relief. Now, what the Commerce Department has readily done is they said, listen, we want to hear from you, 3 times a year. Tell us, where can we add additional support to protect what you're making? What widget, what piece and part, that maybe goes into Brian's supply chain. It presents opportunities for small manufacturers, mid-sized manufacturers, even large producers to say, hey, here's how the government can support us. And what we're looking for is a shot to play on a level playing field, right? Because that's what's happened for decades. Congresswoman Whitley.
John, you mentioned, all the work that the administration is doing through commerce, but there's also the Small Business Administration, who I have referred a lot of businesses to their portal to say, you know what, I didn't think that I could get this widget made in America, but I searched on the portal and I found a domestic manufacturer that's actually in my price range. So the Trump administration is providing the tools necessary to be helpful during this transition. It's not going to happen overnight, as Zach said, but I think all of this emphasis is going to result in one thing that 77 million Americans voted for, and that was putting the American people first. And this America First agenda that President Trump has brought in. And look what he's done in just the first few months. And thank goodness we have the tariff revenue, up to $17 trillion in new investments to fund new factories and technologies and jobs and economic growth. We are really running on Trump's speed, which is at the speed of light in many instances with all the things that he's done. And the one big beautiful bill, the tax certainty that brings, that might help to provide an underbelly of stability there for some of those manufacturers who are feeling a little uncertain with the stability of the tariff pricing. You can count on the fact that your taxes now are going to be your taxes into the future because of what we did in that historic piece of legislation.
Thank you, Congresswoman. You make a great point there about, there's a lot more tools in the tool belt here than just tariffs. And when we want to talk about bringing jobs back and stuff, really what we did for the last 30 years was we offshored our industrial policy to every other nation in the world. And they have been making the decisions of what we will produce and what jobs we will have in America. And really, that's not a place for a country like America to be. We need to reclaim our sovereignty on what we produce and get control of our destiny again here and our future, because it does come down to national security and good jobs. But you mentioned the SBA. That's just one of many, many tools. I'm aware there's a bill in Congress right now that's got actually some bipartisan support to increase the lending limits for SBA-backed loans. And I think those kind of things are the kind of policies that we need to consider when we go beyond tariffs, making sure that manufacturers have the funding and have the low energy costs and all those things that we need, right, to be competitive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working on legislation. It's sourced in America, so if it's a tax credit for when you reshore, and when you are sourcing from other American companies, there's a tax credit available for that. Trying to find more tools in the toolbox to help our U.S. manufacturers, make it easier for them to resupply and rejoin the supply chain made in the USA. President Trump and Secretary Bessent, it's actually pretty remarkable to see. As I said, I mentioned I was in the Oval Office as a member of the Rules Committee for a visit with the president when he was negotiating the trade deal with Japan, and just watching him work with his cabinet, with Lutnick, with Rubio, with Bessent, really an all-star team focused on the right things. We will be seeing new manufacturing growth in the United States. We've already seen growth in the economy above the average, hovering right around 3%. All of that additional revenue that we are able to achieve can go to deficit reduction. That's the right direction. That's what Americans voted for.
That's right. Well, that's the multiplier magic of American production. We make it here. We can have the good jobs. We can reduce the deficit, and we can give good people the ability to raise a family, right? And not have to work 2+ jobs just to pay their health insurance, right? This is how America gets ahead. It's producing things. We've never consumed our way to prosperity. We've always produced our way to prosperity. So we've got a quick break coming up here again. Please don't forget to visit our website at hometalkusa.com to learn more about our upcoming guests and topics. Visit our website at prosperousamerica.org to learn more about the work of the coalition and bringing jobs to America. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
If you're an inventor or you know an inventor out there who would just like to be able to have a conversation with other inventors, join the Inventors Roundtable. It's free. The meetings are virtual, so you can be anywhere in America and talk to another inventor. And for a lot of folks out there, understanding the process, being able to ask questions, getting good service provider information is critical to the inventing process. So, got questions? Want to join? It's free. inventorsroundtable.org.
Hello, and welcome back to the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, right here on the Home Talk USA Radio Network. And I've got my compadre here, John Toomey, the president of the Coalition for a Prosperous America, and we've been talking with Representative Erin Houchin from Indiana's 9th District. I want to say a special thanks to the Congresswoman for joining us today for the beginning of the show here and sharing all of her insights with us about what's going on in her district in Indiana. Now we're going to turn to the latest trade policy updates and Commerce Department activity. Again, John, we've seen a lot of momentum out of Commerce in the past week regarding some of these Section 232 and other tariff activities. Give us a little update on what we've seen in the past few days.
Yes, so Zach, we saw the conclusion and recommendations on the Timber 232, which was really exciting, right? This is a full-on investigation looking at the timber supply chain, everything from kitchen cabinets to construction materials. So this was a big deal for a lot of our members. Wellborn Cabinets down in Alabama making beautiful kitchen cabinets right here in the USA. This was a big deal for them. They had seen the predatory practices of China dumping kitchen cabinets into this country. They were the victors of one of the largest trade cases a few years ago, yet the dumping continued, the predation continued, and the Trump administration rightly recognized, hey, we need to ensure that our timber is protected for purposes of national security and readiness. And they issued a great finding on the timber. And we're very happy about that.
Well, it's not just the timber, right? It's the downstream products. And that's what the Trump administration seems to get about how to do this right? You can't just put a tariff on timber or on steel, right? The steel mill doesn't want to have a tariff on steel just to have a tariff on steel. They want to have downstream customers buying their product. And same with the lumber and the timber. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Yep. And there was some exciting developments that came out of the Timber 232 as well, Zach. We started to see, and I believe Charles Benoit, our trade counsel, touched on this maybe in the last episode with you. We started to see the Commerce Department pivot from ad valorem and start to say, listen, the secretary is going to have authority to issue such things as specific weighted compounded tariffs moving forward, right? And so we're really excited about that, mixed use tariffs. And so you're going to see the Commerce Department depart from this one size fits all percentage based tariff. And they're going to start to use, when necessary and in combination, specific weighted tariffs. We hadn't seen this in 90 years. And Charles rightly touched on this, how important it is, I believe, in the last episode.
That's fantastic, John. And that's exactly how we're going to get the whole supply chain. We've got to be specific, and we've got to look at each component of it differently and consider a different tariff or quota or whatever. There's no one size fits all when it comes to this in order to bring the jobs back. And, you mentioned well-worn cabinets. I happen to know that they employ quite a few people there. I believe almost 4,500 people are employed, and they make those cabinets right from the tree to the finished cabinet that's installed into your home. So they're a complete supply chain. Thousands of jobs, and there's other people like them who are going to be supported by that Timber 232. But I know one of the concerns and a pushback we hear all the time is, don't these tariffs raise prices? And now there's been a lot of economic research out there, and we've dispelled that completely. But in terms of timber, I know we're going to hear, isn't this raising the house price? How might this impact a house, and what have we seen historically?
Yeah, you'll hear that from critics of tariffs, right? But the critics of tariff have been proven this year, it's especially to be wrong, right? And when you look at lumber pricing, right, lumber represents less than 5% of a new home's total cost, right? And so most of the time when you're looking at housing increases, it's coming from land and zoning restrictions, labor shortages and regulation delays, financial costs, interest rates, right? Let's talk.
Yeah, right.
And so the actual cost of timber, it's less than 5% of a new home cost. So, again, there's going to be critics out there who are, in that free trade globalist mantra, that kind of dogma, who have been wrong over the last 20, 30 plus years. And they've been predicting, tariff Armageddon this year, right? Inflation Armageddon. Oh, how bad is inflation going to be? I think it's 2.9%. August PPI was down than expected, which should be good for the CPI leading into the future months. So, again, this is, that fear mongering that you see from a certain, entrenched community that quite honestly doesn't want tariffs because they're, more in favor of free trade globalism, which how well has that worked out for us?
That's right. They like to cherry pick examples and say, oh, the sky is falling. But the reality is when we look at the decades of economic history, and we have it, the data shows that since 1979, the wages for the broad swath of America, most Americans' wages, people making $150,000 and less, their wages have been stagnant compared to costs, meaning inflation and costs have gone up and their wages might have gone up, but they didn't get ahead. And this is why we have people feeling like they have to, and not only feeling, but really working two jobs to pay their mortgage, to put shoes on their kids' feet and pay their health insurance. When a generation ago, we could have sometimes only one person working in the household. They'd feed their kids, they paid their insurance, they were able to buy a home, and they even saved a little bit of money. So we've had the standard of living drop as we've lost this production capacity in America. And so all of these things at the highest level are about getting that back. So the timber doesn't really impact the house price, but what it does, these tariffs, what they do, and like we heard when we were speaking with the Congresswoman about Guardian Bikes in her district, is it raises wages for workers so they can afford to buy a house, so they can afford to buy a bike and a shoes. We want to raise the workers' wages faster than the cost. And the data has proven it over and over again. It's happened in the founding of America at the beginning of our country. It happened in Germany post-World War II, Japan. It's happened in South Korea, Taiwan, and even in China, India too. Every country that uses these tools and practices raises the wages of their population faster than their costs.
Oh, you're spot on, Zach, right? And the Congresswoman didn't touch on it, but I know she mentioned this in our past meeting when we were at the ribbon cutting ceremony in Seymour, the multiplier effect. Right? Not only are you raising the standard for the families working in the facility there, but you're also having the multiplying effect. She talked about the restaurants that moved in across from the facility there on their newest plant, right? The banks that come to town, the businesses that, grow in the community because of what they're doing. That also is an untold success story of tariffs that have returned to production in this country. It brings, more jobs to the community and really raises the standard of living for everyone.
That's right, the restaurants, and then the accountants that everybody needs to do their taxes, and the lawyers they need, all those services that support. I've seen numbers from well-known economists over the years, including our own, talking about a 3 times multiplier effect, that every dollar that comes into manufacturing creates $3 more of activity and growth in the downstream and supporting industries. And so that's what we're achieving when we do this, and that's what President Trump understands and why he's moved the needle so much on this stuff. And again, the Congresswoman and her team sure are leading on this. But this isn't this really shouldn't be such a difficult issue, because for 30 years we've had, both sides of the aisle have had it wrong. Now, what I really would love to see is both sides of the aisle working together to get it right. But hey, we'll take the leadership where we can get it right now. What other things have we seen happening? Are there other actions going on right now in the Department of Commerce to help bring jobs back to America?
Big announcements, Zach. They continue with investigations. They announced an investigation on medical devices, on robotics. Okay, those comments are due on the 17th of October. That's next in a few weeks, a week's time. We're going to see that. We're also going to see more 232s come out. We expect them to start looking at things in the agriculture space, and also in maybe heavy duty ag equipment, right? They're really looking at a wide swath of industries, right? What about grazing cattle and lamb as well? We know that we've lost a good bit of that as well. We heard at our conference act this year, we're down to one lamb rancher out in Utah, really? It's not a good situation.
No, it's terrible. It's been across, any producer in America, whether you're mining, whether you're growing, whether you're ranching, whether you're manufacturing, you have been victim to bad government policy. We've offshored our decision-making to other countries who wanted to take control of this, and they've done a good job. I can't blame them for wanting growth in their nation, but hey, I blame our leaders, for the past 30 years who've let this happen, and we can change it. In Iowa, Senator Grassley, he keeps arguing for more of these trade deals, and what has it done? It's created, a couple 100,000 jobs in soy are there, but you've traded millions of jobs in manufacturing. That math just doesn't add up, and we've gone into deficit in nearly every other agricultural category. We're importing food now. We are a net food importer as a nation. So we haven't traded, we haven't gotten ahead with these trade deals ever for 30 years.
It's a terrible situation. Our food is our national security. And we're going to talk about that in future episodes. We have some great guests coming on the show. But you mentioned China. What have we heard break from the Wall Street Journal earlier this week? China dangling $1 trillion in front of this administration, trying to get them to ease up on what we're doing on trade. What does that tell you, Zach? It tells us it's working, right?
That's right. They're terrified, and they're trying to bribe our country into going back to these same failed deals. And I'm praying for the wisdom. We've seen a lot of wisdom for the administration, that they see through this ruse. We can't go back. It's like going back to an abuser. They keep beating you and abusing you, and you're so broken, you go back and ask for more. We absolutely can't do that. We need to do it differently here. But I see, we're running a little short on time on this segment here. We're going to have to take a quick break. Please don't forget to visit the website at HomeTalkUSA.com to learn more about this show and the other shows on Home Talk USA. Please visit us at ProsperousAmerica.org. And if you have a company and you want to get involved in the exclusion round or any of these inclusion round, rather, any of these kind of things, please reach out to us at ProsperousAmerica.org. I look forward to talking with you again after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
If you have been searching for a convention to attend where you can network, learn, and grow your business, then ASD Market Week is seriously one of the best ones that you can go to. It is seriously one of the biggest retail and wholesale conventions you can attend to on the US grounds. And I really recommend it, because not only are you going to find the new products that you've been looking for your operations, but also meet and network with thousands of individuals that are doing the same exact thing. So highly recommend ASD Market Week, and hopefully to see you guys there.
Hello, and welcome back to the Chairman's Countdown with Zach Mottl. I'm your host, Zach Mottl, and we're here on the Home Talk USA Radio Network. Returning with me is John Toomey. He's the president of the Coalition for the Prosperous America. And John, We were talking a little bit before the break about this deal that China's trying to dangle in front of our president, this $1 trillion. Isn't that our own money that they literally took from us, and they're trying to bribe us with, get back and go back to our abuser and keep taking the abuse, keep losing the jobs from China? Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is, Zach. It's 25 years of China not delivering on one promise. And it's the failed policies of a Republican-led Congress back then 25 years ago. And President Clinton, they teamed up. They let China into the WTO, free trade with China. And Nancy Pelosi back then, she hit it right. Zach, she said, listen, we're opening a cash register with the American taxpayer money, and we're cutting a check to China. And so you're right. It's our money that they're offering back to us. I say no, it's not a deal. And I think President Trump's going to do the right thing. But yeah, that's what they're trying to do right now.
It's funny how Congresswoman Pelosi had it right back then, and now President Trump has it right today. You'd think they'd agree on more things. But, I guess that's politics. But we can't play politics with the American people. That's the reality. And with their jobs, with their wealth, and with our national security. So I'm so glad we're bringing this back, because you're right. China hasn't kept a single promise they've made. And as we talked a little bit earlier on this show, it's caused a hollowing out of the middle class, and it's caused the vast majority of Americans to have their wealth stagnate. And, a lot of people don't realize what's happening to them. It's happening right around them. The frog, how do you boil it slowly in the pot? They just turn up the water. This is why people have to work 2 jobs. And this is why, they look at the generation before them, and maybe the standard of living isn't quite the same as their parents. Their parents were able to save more money and take vacations and not work so many hours. This is a quality of living thing for America, not just a national security thing. So I am so happy to be chairman of this group, the Coalition for Prosperous America. We're really leading the way in terms of bringing this back. We were a lone voice in 2008. Not a lot of people agreed with us. Thank goodness for President Trump coming and moving the Overton window, making this an acceptable part of the debate and discussion to bring jobs back and use tools like tariffs and industrial policy to do it. How does this fit into the goal at our coalition, John, of bringing, more jobs back, like the ones we see in Seymour, Indiana at Guardian Bikes that we talked about with the Congresswoman earlier today?
It's a directly aligned, right? I mean, this organization, this coalition, founded by some brilliant men at the time in 2007, folks like Dan D'Amico, who led Nucor Steel, Brian O'Shaughnessy with Revere Copper, Michael Stumo, Mark Fastow, yourself, Zach, you guys rightly recognize what was happening. Probably 7 years after China entered the WTO, right? We saw our trade deficit increase by $870 billion from 2001 to 2024. It now sits at $1.3 trillion, right? China distorted our market. They destroyed our communities. Bill Archer, I tell this story. Bill Archer was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee back then when they let China into the WTO. So he's the chairman of the committee. We talked to Erin, who sits on the Great Ways and Means. Today, it's led by a wonderful gentleman, Jason Smith. But back then, it was led by a Texan named Bill Archer. His district and surrounding neighborhoods lost about 65,000 jobs directly attributed to China coming into the WTO, according to research out of CPA Education Fund. I mean, that's a terrible result, right? And you can see that all throughout the country, and CPA has modeled this. Our team of economists have looked at this, and it's just the result of China completely gutting and hollowing out our communities. And so they rightly recognized it, and here we are today. Sorry, go ahead.
And then they sent us drugs on top of it. They sent us fentanyl. They took away our hope. They took away our future. They took away our ability to create wealth and care for our children. And to fill the void, the empty void of nothingness, they sent drugs. And we've seen millions of deaths from it. And these two things are inexplicably linked. And I know that the president understands that. But you're right. It's been a bipartisan team before him, and you mentioned back in 2008 when we started CPA, I got a front row seat to it since the year, 2001 really was when my company started being affected. China joined got the most favored nation trading status. And immediately I saw my telecom customers, companies like, Lucent Technologies and Nortel Networks in Canada. These were people that made equipment and electronics in America and exported it to the world. As soon as China came in, I couldn't say free trade chain as fast as they were gone. And they took the whole supply chain with them and millions of jobs. So you're right. Some of us saw it early on because we had a front row seat to it. Dan D'Amico at the steel mill started noticing customers disappearing. And he said, I don't need a steel mill to sell to nobody. I need a steel mill to sell to downstream products and downstream customers. So I think, the Bush administration and other administrations earlier on have recognized only a little bit of it. And they gave maybe protection on just the steel or just the aluminum, but that didn't cut it. You have to get the whole supply chain to get all of the jobs back. And these jobs are jobs that pay above average wages, don't they, John? These are jobs that pay more than the median in the area.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, the manufacturing sector pays more than the service sector, right? And we're finally turning the tide. And we talk a lot on this show about the 232s at Commerce, but that's because it's historic. We're changing 25 years of the way things have been done that just weren't working. And I think it was Ambassador Lighthizer said, after his term with the Trump administration, he gave a talk and he said, why not try it? Because what we're doing just hasn't worked, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but he's right. I mean, you have an opportunity in front of you, and what more bipartisan can you be about, supporting high wage jobs in urban, rural communities across this country? That's a message for both parties. There's no partisan divide there. So
there sure isn't. This is an American thing. This should be simple, but you know how money gets involved and perverts the whole discussion at times. And we've seen that. How did CPA has really been a leader, and we've kind of been the ones bridging this gap between policy and practice, making these actions, from just talk into reality, from politicians talking to actually taking action. How have we done that? How do we kind of pull it back and make it happen here real quickly?
Well, CPA has been at the front of this from the get-go. We understand it better than anyone, and the association has some of the best, if not the best, I say they're the best, economists in the country, if not the globe, studying how trade flows operate, how tariffs operate, the impact on domestic business, how to, safeguard and protect and grow domestic businesses across industries, from metals to pharmaceuticals to medical devices, semiconductors, you name it. We have the cutting edge team, and they deliver, results for our members.
They sure have, John. I want to thank you and the coalition for all the work you're doing. I want to thank Congresswoman Houchin and Guardian Bikes for being a model for U.S. manufacturing and how to get it right. At the Coalition for a Prosperous America, we are fighting every day for American producers, American workers, and American prosperity. Thank you for being part of it.